call my boss, who's still up there, in the tower in the office. And I just said, should I bring a box with me on Monday to empty my desk? Or do I still have a job on Monday?
Hey there, my friend. You are listening to the Hot Mess Hotline, and this is Stephanie Krebens. You are in the right place if you are an ambitious leader who wants to pull off something large and in charge at work. We teach you how to lead with strategy, innovation, flexibility, and focus for new business results, digital transformation, tough decisions, and so much more. Whatever you're working on, we've got hard-earned lessons from executives to make you more adaptable and put these into practice as soon as this episode is over. All right, my friend, today's guest is Michael Judd. He is a technology and strategy expert that has more than 20 years of experience working with some of the who's who's of executives in Fortune 500 companies. He is known for bringing strong strategic, financial, and operational skills to develop disruptive technology strategies that make sense for his clients. Let's dig into this amazing conversation with Michael. He's going to tell you about his hot mess early in his career, and it set the tone for the rest of it. But really, I want you to listen for the questions that he asks for how to drive change with business results and the culture at the same time. Let's go. All right, Michael, tell us about your hot mess, sir.
Well, I've had many hot messes in my career. In fact, I made a career of hot mess solutioning and spent 14 years in IT services as an executive. I ran businesses that range from 50 million to 250 million, largely autonomous for my company, meaning I had the P&L, I had the balance sheet with everything except for the financing, right? So the financing was handled corporate, which would be the debt and the equity, but everything else was on my shoulders. And when I first started my career coming out of business school, I started at the corporate level for 2 years, and it was meant to teach me the business. So here I was with this big IT outsourcer. I was doing M&A work. I was working with the group presidents around the world because we had operations in Australia and in Europe. And the first post I was put at was this new client that we had is a big logo name in the financial services space, okay. Credit card issuer. Okay. And they moved me up to Northern California, and I was at first the business development lead for this thing. I attempted to correct things as much as I could. Well, okay. The client requested the GM leave, and they requested me to become the GM, which was a very unusual circumstance. I had never led a team before. I was always an individual contributor, a smart guy, and I had reasonable solutioning because, again, I was a logical, smart individual. But here they were like, can you take over a team of 120? You've never run an operation like this and do it. And so the client actually requested from my leadership team, and it had already built up such animosity and such issues with the GMs that had been taken off, and each one lasted, say, 2 or 3 months and just rotated through.
Oh, wow.
That it put a lot of expectations on me because my company did agree to the client, given the circumstances, to put me in charge. Mm-hmm. And so I very quickly had to come up with a plan. Again, never having led people before in that context, come up with a logical plan. Well, I'm a finance person, worked for Deloitte, got my MBA at UCLA, and I thought I could put a plan together. So I did. I put together an economic game plan, and I said, here is a plan. It will take 12 months to complete. And everyone went, that's completely unacceptable. And I said, no, hold on. Just hear me out. I said, there's elements that you're going to feel better about within 3 months. But there's elements that will not complete for a year. Now, I had, again, not led a lot of people, but I did know that culture takes time to change.
And how long had this hot mess been going on before you said, I need another 12 months?
It was about 18 months.
Okay.
So, and it was like almost a 1-year transition. So the transition was kind of and I was there for the 6 months before they put me into that leadership position. So they kind of had a chance to get to know me. and know that I was trying to help fix the problems.
Yeah.
But there was structural issues, in these kind of deals. We would buy the assets from the client. So these would be servers, telephones, laptops, all their technical equipment, and we would onboard all their staff. So you're talking, a large staff of individuals that didn't necessarily want to leave their company,
right?
Suddenly was an outsourced provider, but they didn't act like outsourced providers. So they were in the hallways griping to the client because they were never happy about having to leave in the first place, and maybe hoping that this thing will blow up and they'll come back.
Yes.
And so the people side of this, which happens not just in these kind of acquisitions, but happens in any acquisition.
Yeah.
Because I now work with VCs and I work with private equity. And when you go in and you acquire a company, you have to integrate not just the technical side of it, which is very important, but you have to integrate the culture side.
Yes.
And that is difficult to do in many cases. Now, sometimes they're super excited, right? It's, a small company joins Google and Google has all these benefits and it's like, yay, I've just graduated. But in many cases like this, it's like, wait a second, I went to an outsourcer who's cutting costs, and efficiency driven, which means now I went from very loose management to very metric driven management.
Yes.
And a lot of them didn't like it.
Yes.
So,
well, and I think we can't ignore the fact that there's an element of anytime there's an acquisition, a big transition like this, employees feel like there's something about their autonomy that's been taken away. It's like, no, I signed up to work at this company with these people, and now it's this company and these unknown people who by human design, human evolution, we're going to deem as scary and bad. And then you add the layer of accountability through metrics, and
I'll add one more.
Yeah.
The hallways haven't changed. The cubicle hasn't changed. So they're still in the middle dealing with the same people they were dealing with before, but they didn't know how to be a service provider because they weren't trained to be, nor did they understand the benefits.
Yes.
Now, of course, there's going to be 25, 30% that get it. They're like, wow, this is great. And this didn't necessarily have a great time at that company. Now I have an opportunity to work with a whole bunch of different brands.
Yep.
So basically you could move around and take advantage of that. So that some people get it right from the beginning, but a large swath does not. So it creates tension, infighting, et cetera. So when I came back with this 1-year plan, I'm like, look, I can fix structural issues and I can make a commitment right up front. I'm not going to come to you asking for money, which my predecessors had. They said, this is a bad deal for us. We're not quite making enough money. Can you give me a little bit more? And they're like, this is driving me nuts. I just sold this to you. You committed, you fix it. So that was the one thing I could do. I said, I'm not going to ask you for money. That's on me as a business leader. I've got this, but culture takes time. So I said, you'll see a lot of the functional stuff in the first 6 months, particularly the first 3 months, but to get the buy-in from everybody and make them feel like they're a real team takes a longer time. And by the way, I was estimating at a year. I was pretty spot on.
Okay.
But it was completely based on theory. Not based on a wealth of experience that I could say, I've turned this knob 15 times. This is my 16th turn. And I know how many turns, how far to turn the knob.
Yes.
And so, this was it was a very big challenge because I was an unproven leader on my side of the fence. So people were questioning me all the time to say, what is he doing? Is he doing it right? We put this guy in charge. He's never been in charge of something like this. This is kind of an elite club. And the client pushed us to put him in place. Weird. And then on the flip side, I have the client who does feel very much loyal to me because they thrust me into this situation.
Yes.
But they're frustrated with my company.
Yes.
Because of the history and because of the issues, right? So I'm stuck. So
you've got conflict. Yes. I was going to say, you're stuck in, you've got conflict and tension coming from you at all sides.
Which, by the way, again, I work with private equity. I work with VCs. Yeah. I'm used to be stuck in the middle now, right? So because it's the same kind of thing. I wouldn't consider taking a post as an executive of a company without understanding what the investors want as an outcome, as well as what the team and kind of the business expectations are, because they are not always in alignment.
No, I would say often, they're probably never in alignment.
it's rare, but that's my job. Yep. My job is to bring alignment, right, between the two parties, and then to execute against a plan, which means I need to understand what you want as outcomes.
Yes.
And oftentimes that means I pass on opportunities because I can't achieve a good enough outcome. So going back to my first hot mess, and I've done many since then, but my first hot mess, I had to sit down with the client and say, I'm willing to step in the middle, but you're going to have to make change happen. When I come to you and I say I need change, then you're going to help me make that change happen. I'm not going to ask you for money, but I may ask you for contractual changes. I may ask you for personnel realignments. I may ask you for different things. Okay. And going back to my leadership, I have to say, look, I get that you want certain return expectations out of this. I will work to better your expectations, but I'm going to need some change out of you too. When I call up and say I need a different business leader or I need to move somebody around, you need to be helping me on that side. And so here I went marching into this mess. And the first 3 months, my side was going, this is going pretty good, because they're more focused on the returns and the structural fixes. Client, on the other hand, is still looking at that intangible, that I not only want to see it running right, but I want to see them being innovative. I bought into this. I bought into this idea that a technology specialist would take over my operations and they're going to sprinkle magic pixie dust over it. And not only is everyone going to be happy, I'm going to have like innovation raining down on me.
Ooh.
Which happens in the sales process on these large deals, right?
Yep.
You're selling 5 to 7 year deals and they're trying to sell it. And they say, well, look, we're innovators. You're going to get all this stuff.
Yes.
It's not contractual, but it's in the expectations.
Yes. It was in a slide deck and it was promised at some point.
Yeah. And they all remember. And so, you add into it, I had a bit of a, not to use an overused term, but a bit of a maverick client on the other side of the table. Okay. I mean, it was part of the reason why I was there in the first place. But on the other time, he loved contention and he loved pulling strings, because he believed that it was tension and disruption that brought the best out of teams.
Oh, okay.
That was his personal leadership style. I learned more from that individual than I probably did from all the other executives I worked with afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for weird reasons, but I mean, there's a couple stories there. But his team approach was walk into the room, drop a grenade, and see how people react.
Yes.
And there are leaders like that. Like, he actually had a book on his shelf that was like, and I'm going to butcher the name of it because I still have, to this day, have not been able to find it, but it was like 50 ways to cause contention in a meeting. It was a book. Like, we opened it up one time. We had a data center outage. We opened it up and his leadership team was there. And we're like, what is that book? We opened it up. Wow. It's like dog-eared.
Yeah.
And I'm opening up reading it and the leadership team's like, hey, we did that. We did that in a meeting a couple weeks ago. He did that.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Again, his style was contention breeds disruption, breeds the betterment. You can agree with it, not agree with it, but that was his style. So to add in that, and it's important to understand that, because 8 months into this, again, contractual issues largely resolved, functions, in terms of SLAs, we're meeting the SLAs. The team was starting to gel together. Things were going well. Okay. Client decides, I'm going to go shake this up. Takes a binder of complaints with them to New York City. And my executive leadership team convened with their executive leadership team in downtown New York. So we flew out from Northern California out to New York.
Okay.
And it was a complaint fest for an entire day of just turning pages. You don't do this right. And this was an issue we had before. And a lot of them were legacy issues, but the intention was to cause disruption. But again, I'm stuck in the middle. My leadership team doesn't know me that well because I'm a brand new leader.
Yes.
And then here's this team from the client and they're going, such and such company is terrible. They do this wrong. They do this. Michael Judd's great, but this goes wrong and this is terrible. Michael Judd's the best. And I'm like going, this is not helping my case any bit. So 2/3 of the meeting, they pull me in the other room. They're like, we see what you're doing. You're just blaming everything on us and you're taking the credit and the client's just making it look like you're something different than, the company. Anyway. Oh. So in the end, we went through the day, and I mean, again, we were really close to getting the hot mess turned around. We were like, I'd say 75% there.
Okay,
and I told them there, I said, we're 75% there, everybody. And meeting ends, and they're talking about bringing in a guy to oversee what I've been doing. I go down to the bottom floor, down to the ground level in New York City. I call my boss, who's still up there, in the tower, in the office. And I just said, should I bring a box with me on Monday to empty my desk? Or do I still have a job on Monday?
Yeah.
And he's like, Michael, don't worry about it. We'll get through this. No box. Go into work. And so they sent in somebody that next week to review what I've been doing. Because again, it's a trust issue here, right? They didn't know me well enough. And they're like, send in a seasoned executive to take a look at it.
Yeah.
And he went through all my plans and I laid out everything that we had done. And we looked at the economics, we looked at the people, we talked to he went and talked to leadership team. And he came back and just said, I can make not a single improvement to his plan. In 3 months, I'm confident this thing is going to be completely corrected. And it was 3 months later, it was corrected. 6 months after that point in time, so 3 months,
okay,
the client sends a multi-million-dollar request for money back because they felt like we had it too easy. So they went in the opposite direction from super complaint to Michael never asked for money anymore. And they're happy and they're gelling as a team. I think we're overpaying. We're overpaying for the services.
Oh.
And so, we want money back, which immediately my leadership team went, I get it. Michael's a good leader. And, that experience led to 4 turnarounds that I did. So basically, think of this as, experience one. And by the way, I was there for 3+ years.
Wow.
So 18 months, we rolled through 4 or 5 GMs. I was there for 3 years, and they got acquired, and it was just time. And so they rolled me out, but they put me on 4 different flavors of turnarounds from there on. So I became the turnaround specialist that they could send in to look at all aspects of a business: contractual, people, dynamics, win the hearts of the client, et cetera, because I gained the trust through that first hot mess scenario.
Yes. All right. So question, how did you, because what I heard in the story of guys, we're like 75% of the way there, stay with me. Right. And like you said, you were 8 months into a 12-month plan. So that's about there, like time wise. Yeah. But how did you maintain this sense of confidence of, I can tell you we're 75% of the way there, and there's a couple of layers to this. One is like, and I apologize for layering these questions here, but I'm assuming you had success criteria to say, here's how I know we're winning. And from like your internal sense of self, how did you maintain a level of confidence to keep going through these day-to-day evolutions?
So my office, I was co-located with the client, had a glass face to the office. And the joke that my team had was they could tell how good or bad a day was by watching how I pulled at my hair. Because they did drive-by. I didn't know this till, much later, but they would do drive-bys. If Michael was like sunking his head like this on a call or yanking at my hair going, they knew they had a barometer of how the day was going. So, the mechanical, call it the metric side of it was completed. It was performing. And so I had confidence on the metric side. What again, took time was getting the right accountability at the right levels. And the good news was I didn't have to go out and hunt. For the most part, I didn't have to hunt on the street for people because of the nature of being a 60,000 plus employee company. I could go and pluck leaders from other businesses and put them in, and it was a matter of integration. And so the confidence that I had came from largely completing the structuring and the metric side of it, but still having to correct the accountability. And I made mistakes. Like, it could have gone faster if I had not taken a chance with personnel, probably more than I should have. Because somebody came in and they said, well, this guy is really great. Da, 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 da. Okay. I trusted that, referral. And that didn't always work out because I didn't know what the role entailed. Because, here I have a head of operations, right? And their job is to make sure we're meeting the metrics and we're getting the right personnel in the right place, and they're balancing SLAs with cost. I mean, it's a tough job. In fact, those guys always had like an earpiece in at all times because you never knew when they were going to get a call for some issue at a data center or something. So they used to joke because they just always had this attached, like, because back then we didn't have wireless earbuds, right? So they just had this like thing going down to their BlackBerry. And
that's a blast from the past word, BlackBerry.
Yeah, the crackberry with the actual physical line.
Yes.
And so, I didn't know what made a good operations leader. And so I had to burn through a couple, of people to get to. Now, when I found the right person, it was awesome. Things just kind of pulled together. But when you take a chance on a leadership change, there's an investment period there. That could be, A, I got to line them up to come in. And then B, it could be a month before you determine, or maybe even 2 months before you determine this isn't working. And again, like I said, I had a client that had a very particular leadership style, which was disruption driven. Not everybody's into disruption driven. So I had to find somebody that was okay living in that context as well. Yes. And so that's the part that took more time. And having those key roles is so important to trust. Stephen M. R. Covey has the book, The Speed of Trust. And I'm a huge trust person. And in it, he talks about the two pillars of trust, one being character and the other one being competence. So character says that if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. Yes. Competence says you say you're going to do it, you can actually do it. And so there's dimensions underneath that. It's an easy read. It's a great book for the fundamentals of, what builds and erodes trust. Agreed. And I train many leadership teams specifically on that book. But like I said, you look at the character and competence, and you're bringing in new leaders, you got to weigh and kind of say, is it a character issue? Is it a competence issue? And then there's also the external factors of the client. And does it work? That takes time. Yes. You don't just turn on a dime and find a great leader. And so that's one of the things. Confidence, I had confidence. So one last part on that meeting up in New York, they gave me a great operations leader. That completed. That's where it completed. They really did give me just a superstar. And I worked with him a couple times over my 14 years and loved the guy to death. And he was a rock star. Yeah. I've experienced this situation where you cycle through individuals and positions a few times before you get it right, both in companies I've been an employee at. I've certainly been one of those employees. Yeah. I got cycled through because I wasn't the best fit, and it happens at large companies. I feel like that is the little spoken effect of innovation. It's just a reality. Like, you go in, you design a job, or you design here's what I need this person to deliver, and I think this is the type of person it is. Yeah. And you iterate it, and it could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months, hell, it could be years. The faster you get this person in doing stuff, the faster you can cycle through it. But that's just a reality of innovation. Yeah. The same thing happens with tech. The same thing happens with contracts evolving. I mean, it's unfortunate because it's a real human being impacted, but that
that's just to me an ingredient of innovation. It just depends on, did you get lucky enough to hire a person that can flex with the role enough? Usually you don't. And so you have to cycle through to a different personality type.
And that's why a lot of executives that do, this kind of turnaround work have known quantities that they've worked with before.
Yes.
They don't have the time to make the mistakes.
Yes.
So they have kind of some leaders that they bring along with them and say, look, I got this problem over here. Maybe the person is not even the best industry, but she is a known quantity in terms of their operating skills.
Yep.
And that is so valuable to a leader.
Yeah, agree completely. All right, well, let's take a commercial break, and then we're going to come back and talk about why are you better? Why have you built better companies? Because you went through this amazing hot mess experience. All right, well, we take a quick break from this amazing conversation today. I want to share with you a new tool that I have for you. I think that there's a myth in our workplaces. Well, let me say this. I know there's a myth in our workplaces that meetings have to suck, and I don't believe that whatsoever. By all accounts, our time in meetings have doubled, if not more, since the start of the pandemic. And this time with your colleagues should not be a waste of time. It should be the most valuable. So if you're looking for more resources to lead meetings that are productive, powerful, impactful, and have everyone participating, get over to my website at stephaniecrevens.com/lead kick-ass meetings and get some new tools so that when you leave a meeting with your colleagues, you're not left going, what the actual F was that? You're going, yes, we're going to take on the world together. Let's get this done, because it was an unbelievably powerful meeting. Those tools are out there for you, my friends, and they're on my website today, stephaniecrevens.com/lead kick-ass meetings. Now, let's get back into that conversation. All right. So, Michael, you've been through numerous iterations of turnaround, using this logical process to drive transformation in business results and culture.
Yeah.
What were some of these key takeaways that you've continued to use throughout your career because you went through this pressure cooker of a hot mess?
Yeah. The formula is very common, regardless of the circumstances.
Okay.
In other words, the way that I assess a company, the way I look at it from an alignment perspective, from a personnel capability perspective, from a financial and metrics perspective, are just well-founded, reusable, almost doesn't matter industry group. Yes, there's going to be nuances between aerospace and defense and financial services.
Of course.
But for the most part, at a leadership effectiveness level, it's not necessarily that different.
Okay.
And so, I came in as an assessor of leaders, but I did it within a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar company that had the safety net of that piece of the balance sheet that I mentioned before, right?
Yes.
The safety net of debt and equity. In other words, I never had to worry about not paying payroll. And I had worked for a startup when I was getting my MBA, and it was a small company, wound up getting sold to Fox Media Group. They were doing banner ad optimization when that was hot back in 99.
Okay.
Back in the day, banner ads, you could just get the most random of banner ads. It could be, you're as a guy going, looking at it, next thing you know, you have feminine hygiene products, being put in front of you. You're like, what? This makes no sense. Why am I getting this? And so,
Is this why cookies were invented, maybe? Who knew?
Well, cookies were all part of it, but, because to get some trolling data on you.
Yeah.
But then, there's algorithms to say, okay, we have historical data. How do we make it smarter? And the company wound up selling itself, and I wound up not staying with the company. I wound up going to Bear Stearns and investment banking before I went off into IT services. But it was a taste of startup land. And so coming out of this challenge of doing turnarounds for this large IT services company, I thought, you know what, I really want to go in the opposite direction. So there was a guy that sold one of his companies to my company previously, and I helped him integrate into the Borg. We were the Borg. We absorb everything in sight, right? And so we take in, these companies. As a startup guy, he didn't get the culture. He didn't get the processes and the burdensomeness of a publicly traded company.
Yes.
So I was kind of like, well, let me be your liaison. We were both in Southern California and we got to know each other. And so I left my company and I did some individual consulting where I was counseling on large deals. And I wound up working with him on a startup, and I eventually joined that startup as I think I was employee number 5 or something like that.
Okay.
But it was very early stage. And so I went and applied the principles, as much as was applicable to that environment. The difference and the lack of experience that I had when I did that, because I had many, many, many sleepless nights in startup land.
Yes.
Was the fact, again, it's like, do we have enough money? How do we make payroll? Like everything becomes more sensitive.
Yep.
Small decisions have massive repercussions.
Yes.
In a corporate environment, I could make changes. I could say it's going to take another month to fix that, but we'll get it fixed. It's not a problem. In startup or small company land, that month could be killer.
Yeah.
I mean, there may not be enough slack in the system.
Yep.
So going back to your question, I could take many of the principles with me. Effectiveness of leadership, metrics driven. I could, look at the financials. I could break them down. I could forecast. I can do all those things. But the element that became the dominant learning component for the next few years was the lack of flexibility. The speed at which decisions needed to be made had to increase. Because those that do not make quick decisions in a small company environment have far greater repercussions than you do in a large environment.
Yes.
And so I feel for all the small business owners out there and leaders and I've been on both ends of this thing. So I've had the massive operations and it was great. And I had an admin and I traveled every week and I had all these things that a large company provides, which is kind of like you somewhat take for granted because you're like, I've got to make this happen.
Yeah.
But again, the timeframes are very different. In a small company, I'm in the back of coach. I'm doing whatever it takes. I'm traveling, but I'm, living in a cheap hotel and, trying to stretch every dollar so that we have decision-making time. Because funding and cash flow means time. And if you don't have it, then you spend most of your time trying to get more cash flow, trying to get more funding. And you when you're a leader, I think you feel it very acutely. You try to somewhat shield the rest of the organization from that challenge because you don't want them to lose confidence because this is what happens in smaller companies.
Yes.
Which means you internalize a lot of that burden as an executive leader.
Yeah.
Far more than I internalized in a large company setting.
Oh, that's such a great piece of awareness of the difference in part between large and small cultures. Because I work with a lot of leaders who they're in a large bureaucracy. They think they want to be in a small culture and vice versa, right? And they don't understand the self-awareness of what you internalize and don't, and the impact of speed of decision. And there's frustration when you switch on both sides. I would love to hear from you so that our audience can learn, because I work with a lot of larger organizations now, and that speed of decision is frustrating for virtually everyone, yet no one's making a speed of decision or, speedy decisions, I should say, so I can use some proper grammar. How would you encourage folks to think about how to have a speed of decision making in a large organization to keep it more nimble, more innovative, which equals more risk, but more innovative, to have some of the benefits of a smaller organization with the safety net of a larger organization?
It is very difficult. So I will say that now that I've spent I would say far more time. I've spent a significant amount of time working with startups, working with PE-backed, so both VC and PE-backed companies. going back to a large environment, is not very attractive, to be honest,
Yeah.
because of that conundrum.
Yes.
That it is a matrixed decision making. Yes, if you're an executive leader, you obviously you have far greater impact to make decisions. But as a kind of like a senior leader within a company, you have to create your own agenda that forces change to happen. Now,
Yes.
in my case, I was given hot messes one after the other,
Yes.
and I was told, fix it as fast as you can.
Yeah.
So that urgency was there, but I had the latitude of, if I missed a little bit of time, it didn't kill the turnaround.
Of course.
And what I found was I was best in an 18 to 24 month, highly structured turnaround environment in a large company than I was in post turnaround steady state management, because I lost a lot of my drive.
Yes.
And it's a natural thing when you're kind of like just ramming it home. You're kind of like, okay, we're here. Let's take a victory lap. You know, you go in front of the entire company. They're celebrating you. They're putting you up on the shoulders of the executives.
Yep.
You know, all these things. And it's like, oh, victory lap's great, but your foot's off the pedal.
Yeah.
You know, you're kind of like, well, I kind of hit my big metrics. Now I just need incremental improvements. And I found that I got bored in those situations.
Yep.
And bored, Michael, is not a good thing, I learned. And
do you start trouble, Michael, when you get
no,
bored?
well, yes. I mean, probably that's probably where I get into political troubles, is because I'm like, I'm just, you know, throwing hammers around and,
Yes.
you know, and just trying to talk change versus doing change. I'm much better doing the change.
Yes.
And so, you know, in the small company environment, very rarely have I ever run into a situation where it's like, oh, we can just throw it back. It's easy from here on out. No, it's survival every day.
Yes.
And,
yes.
But like I said, the wake or the repercussions of delayed decision making are so much higher. And so, like you said, for large companies, I think the challenge is building a plan that creates a change program that you can get agreement with people and you can drive hard against. That helps a lot, but it also entails risk.
Yes. Yeah.
And large corporate environments do not like risk.
That is truth. That is true.
And so when you're driving the program, oftentimes, let me give you an example. So I was working with a prominent financial services company. This is post big company. I was in this startup.
Okay.
And we had a meeting with the top executives of this company. And I mean, top executives, top floor of the company. And everyone around the table was celebrating. We have an alliance. This is going to be the greatest technology change. We're all on board. So big company meets super smart startup.
Oh.
And we're all like toasting each other. And
yep.
great.
Yeah.
Immediately, the culture differences started.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Now they were great people, and I don't mean it in a disparaging way.
Right.
But the risk of this technology innovation failing for them was far greater than for us.
Yes.
Because the CEO is already on board with this. If it's the CEO's decision, there's only downside.
Yeah.
Right. And so in a lot of large corporate environments, you know, executives have to look at change programs, but they also have to weigh in what is the risk of a change program and what if it doesn't work, and then how does the culture react to that change. And that's where I find it very difficult with large companies. You know, I've had many deals killed by the lawyers, if anybody else, because they look at the deal and they're like, well, I don't know, there's a risk, you know, and that one guy at the startup, he's got this background, I'm not sure, and deal done. You know, because the risk mitigators come in and squash risk-taking innovation.
Yes.
So that's the balancing act that, I do recognize for people that are in a corporate environment, is that sometimes it's hard to make things happen unless everybody's on board with that change. In my case, everybody want to change. Client want to change. Executive want to change. Come up with a plan, make the change happen.
Okay.
We'll give you whatever resource you need. March. Awesome. That's exciting. Go make it happen. Then it's all execution.
Yeah.
But creating change is hard if you don't have that alignment.
Yeah. Well, it certainly is. I personally don't believe, and it's because I've equipped myself and our clients with all the tools. It's not, I don't believe that it's hard. It's you need another skill set and tool belt that you probably haven't leveraged before. Yeah. That's what makes it feel hard, because you're not using the right tool. You're using the hammer when it's like, no, this is the hex head, what that requires that special bit that keeps it in tighter. This isn't a nail, but you're like, no, but I always use a hammer. And it's like, it's not about what you use, it's about what is needed. And what I heard in your stories there, and there's multiple elements, of big culture, small culture, decision-making, risk, there's many different elements there. But for you as a leader, yourself, the environment that you're best in short-term and long run. Not everyone is a maintainer. Not everyone's a builder. Not everyone's an innovator. Not everyone is built at that same kind of speed, if you will, for decision making in the long term. And so none of those styles are great or terrible. You are who you are, and knowing that helps you craft a career where you can make the most difference. Which is awesome for you. And I hope for folks listening into is like, you need to know what your life cycle is in a role in order to be successful. And I speak from experience. And that's why I said, Michael, do you cause trouble? Because I cause a lot of trouble when I get bored.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, if you are a change agent and you're used to making change happen at a certain pace, and you're an adrenaline junkie in that sense, and then suddenly that change is completed, or the change, is put on hold, or whatever the reason are, that adrenaline just doesn't drain out of you. Suddenly you start poking in all kinds of different areas. And that can cause trouble, sometimes with your peers, sometimes with others. And so for me, I had an amazing time in that 14 years that I was there at my company, but I also knew it was time for change because it had become far too formulaic for me. And I like innovation. I like being at the forefront. It is exciting. It is exciting to be in small businesses. And if folks are not excited about it, then they probably just need to do some reflection, because I bet you they could make it exciting with a few adjustments. But there's an excitement there that is very different than being in a large company. But part of that excitement comes with a higher risk level. And that also means, like I said, I had days where I did not sleep because we didn't know how we're going to make payroll. I'm a little more numb to that than I was in the early days. I'm just kind of like, well, we'll figure it out. We'll kind of work through it. But in the early days,
I wouldn't say numb. I would say better coping mechanisms.
That's probably better. I mean, it's experience which causes me less anxiety. When I have to solve problems like that. But when I faced it for the first time, in one case, I even put money into the company to help make payroll.
Wow.
And a deal fell through right after that. So I had high confidence going into it, and I'm like, okay. And I had to go to my wife and just say, I think I might have doubled down at the wrong time. Here we were going from a big corporate environment and prestige and support and all this stuff to startup land. Making less money, more equity driven, and then, just helping the company survive, which we did survive it, and I did get my money back in the end. But that moment was a lesson to me about, how much do you put into a small company environment? How much risk are you willing to take and put into it? Because it is a different level.
Yeah. Different. It's just a different game. Oh my gosh, Michael, thank you for this amazing conversation today. So insightful. Love hearing from your experiences and sharing these lessons that regardless of tenure and career, folks can put into practice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It was enjoyable. I thank you for inviting me to the podcast.
Awesome. I don't know about you, but I found Michael to be unbelievably, obviously intelligent, but there's a humility and a patience that he has while maintaining a sense of urgency while driving change that I think is a really unique gift. And you can hear as part of his conversation, like he's a finance guy, right? Like there is a thoroughness to his work that I have no doubt contributes to his success. Here are some of my top takeaways that I want to share with you. And I would love, of course, to hear yours wherever you're watching or listening in. And I'm going to start using this statement from here on out because I think it's really, really important. When you're stuck in the middle, my middle managers, my vice presidents, my directors, when you're stuck in the middle, your job is to create alignment, especially when there's competing interests. So you heard the story about how Michael was stuck between what his employer wanted, what the client wanted, plus what the folks at the business that just got acquired wanted. And oftentimes I find the leaders that I work with, when they are feeling stuck in that situation, the tool they go to is, let me ask more questions so that I can get my questions answered. And I like to help people reframe it and say, no, this is your opportunity to create clarity, to answer the questions that remain left unanswered, because your stakeholders, your constituents are not thinking through all of these. And you, as someone who is stuck in the middle between competing interests, should be bringing all of that together. I think this is an unbelievably powerful skill set for someone to acquire and to be able to implement in order to be successful to drive change. But to me, that quote really summed up the necessary skill that someone like a middle manager or even somebody in a C-suite who's stuck between competing interests has to be willing to take on. It's a challenge in and of itself. When you're stuck in the middle, your job is to create alignment, not ask more questions and get more details. It's to create alignment. I'll put the link to the book, Speed of Trust, that Michael mentioned. Fabulous book. Teach on it all the time as well. I'd love for you to learn from it, but talks about what it really takes to create trust in an organization and between human beings. When evaluating change and what needs to happen, my friend, did you hear the really 4 levels that Michael's always evaluating? Alignment of strategy, financial metrics, right? Where is this organization? Where is it headed financially? And of course, there's KPIs in there, other business metrics, and that probably goes in the alignment piece. But then the personnel and effective leadership piece, equally as important as the money and the strategic plan. Being able to evaluate those 4 levels will allow you to truly create change management strategy that can drive your organization forward. And the last one that really it hit home for me, because we work with most small businesses as well as large. Know your safety net. Know what your safety net is for your organization, and it's going to be different at every organization, but know what it is, because you want to use that to create a foundation to make decisions in a very timely way, and you know what you can risk and what you cannot. But in your business, what is your safety net? All right, my friend, let us get back to the important work of the day. Take these lessons, integrate it into your work, and if you would share this with another pro troublemaker that maybe is feeling stuck in the middle, I would be so grateful. And I'll see you soon, my friend.